On the day Eleanor Shaw was promised to Marcus Reed, she had never laid eyes on him, and she signed her name to the agreement her dying father set in front of her, because it was the last thing he asked of her, and she could not refuse a dying man. Her father owed a debt to the Reed Ranch, a large one, the kind that takes a homestead when it comes due. The bargain was plain and old as the hills. Eleanor would marry the Reed heir, Marcus, and the debt would be forgiven, and her father could die knowing his land and his daughter were both provided for. Eleanor was 22. She had her own ideas about her life, and no room to act on a single one of them, because a daughter with a dying father and a ruinous debt has exactly as much freedom as the debt allows, which is none. She rode to the Reed Ranch to meet her promised husband for the first time, in a wagon with everything she owned, toward a marriage arranged over her head between her father and a man she had never met. She told herself she would make the best of it. She told herself Marcus Reed might be kind. She had heard he was handsome and proud and the heir to a great deal of land, and none of those things were love, but a sensible woman did not expect love from a debt settlement, and Eleanor Shaw was nothing if not sensible. She had not counted on the other brother. It was the younger Reed who met her wagon, because Marcus was away buying cattle and would not be back for 3 days, and so the man who handed Eleanor down and carried her trunk and showed her the ranch was not her promised husband, but his brother, Jonah. Jonah Reed was nothing like the handsome, proud heir she had braced for. He was quieter and plainer, and he had a way of actually listening when she spoke that she was not used to from men. He was the second son, which on a cattle ranch means the one who does the work the heir is too important for, and over the 3 days before Marcus returned, Jonah showed Eleanor the land she was to marry into, and answered her questions honestly, and made her laugh twice, which she had not expected to do once. She knew the danger of it by the second day, and could do nothing about it. A woman promised to one man does not get to choose to stop noticing his brother. She noticed everything. The way Jonah gentled a nervous horse, the way the hands spoke to him, easy and respectful, in a way she suspected they did not speak to Marcus, the way he caught himself, more than once, about to say something to her and stopped, because he knew, as she knew, exactly what she was there for and to whom she was promised. On the third evening, watching the road for the dust of Marcus's return, Jonah said the only honest thing either of them had let themselves say. "My brother is a good man," he told her. "He will treat you well. I want you to know that, before he comes. Whatever else is true, that's true." And Eleanor heard the whatever else is true, sitting under the sentence like a stone under still water, and understood that he was feeling the exact thing she was feeling, and was, like her, going to do absolutely nothing about it, because there was nothing to be done. She had braced herself, on the wagon ride to the Reed Ranch, for almost anything. A cruel man, a cold one, a handsome man who would expect things she was not ready to give. She had built defenses against a dozen kinds of husband. She had built no defense at all against a kind brother who would meet the wagon she expected the husband to meet, because that possibility had not occurred to her. And so Jonah Reed got past every wall she had raised, simply by not being the man the walls were built for. The 3 days before Marcus returned were the most dangerous 3 days of Eleanor's life, and she knew it with every hour. She kept telling herself that it was only the relief of finding the Reed place less terrible than she feared, that the warmth she felt toward Jonah was just gratitude misnamed. She was too honest, even with herself, to believe it for long. By the 3rd day she had stopped pretending it was gratitude, and started, instead, the harder work of feeling a thing fully and resolving to act on none of it, which is the particular discipline of women, given no good choices. Marcus Reed rode in on the 3rd day, and he was everything Eleanor had been told, handsome and proud, and easy in his certainty. And he was, as Jonah had promised, not unkind. He greeted his promised bride with courtesy. He told her he was glad she had come, that the arrangement suited them both, that she would want for nothing as his wife. Every word of it was decent, and every word of it landed on Eleanor like a door closing, because there was no cruelty in him to rebel against, no flaw to seize on, only a settled, handsome certainty that she was a matter arranged and concluded. He did not ask her a single question about herself. He did not need to. She was the terms of a debt, satisfactorily met, and Marcus Reed was a man who, having concluded a transaction, did not reopen it. He was kind the way a man is kind to a good horse he has purchased. Eleanor understood, watching him, that she could live a whole life beside this man and never once be asked what she thought, and that he would never be cruel to her, and that the never being asked would be its own slow cruelty, the kind that has no name and leaves no marks. And across the supper table sat Jonah, who had asked her 100 questions in 3 days and listened to every answer, and who now said almost nothing, because his brother was home, and the thing between Eleanor and Jonah had no right to exist, and they both kept it from existing by main force. 2 threads pulled tight in that house, the promise and the truth, and Eleanor Shaw lay awake that night, understanding that she was about to marry the wrong brother for the right reasons, and that being sensible, which she had prided herself on her whole life, was going to cost her the one thing being sensible was supposed to protect, which was any chance at happiness. What she noticed most was that Jonah seemed to assume she was a person. It sounds a small thing. It was not a small thing to a woman who had spent the last year being discussed over, planned for, arranged, settled and signed away, always the subject of sentences and never the speaker of them. Jonah asked what she thought of the land. He asked what she had wanted, before the debt, before her father's illness took all the room out of her life. No one had asked her what she wanted in longer than she could clearly remember, and the asking was so unexpected that she answered honestly, and the honesty felt like taking off a tight shoe at the end of a long day. It was Marcus who broke it, and that was the thing none of them expected, because the proud, certain heir was not supposed to be the one paying attention. He was certain, not stupid. He had ridden in on the 3rd day and watched his bride and his brother across a supper table for a week, and a man does not have to be tender to be observant. He saw how Jonah went quiet when Eleanor entered a room, and how Eleanor's eyes went to Jonah and away, fast, like a hand pulled back from a stove. He saw his brother, who he loved, performing the same careful nothing that his bride performed, and he was proud, and his first feeling was anger, and he sat with the anger for 2 days before he did anything, which was, for Marcus Reed, a great deal of patience. When he finally spoke, he spoke to Jonah, out at the corrals, plain and hard. "You're in love with her." Not a question. Jonah did not insult either of them by denying it. "I haven't laid a hand on her," he said. "I haven't said a word I shouldn't. She's promised to you, and I've kept every inch of that, and I'll keep it the rest of my life if I have to." "That's the trouble," Marcus said. "The rest of your life, the rest of hers." He looked at his brother a long moment. "She came here to pay her father's debt. I came home and concluded a transaction. You came home and fell in love. Only one of those 3 is worth a marriage, and it isn't mine." Marcus's kindness was the cruelest thing about him, in the end, because it was real, and it was not enough, and there was nothing to push against in it. A woman can leave a cruel man, or at least hate him cleanly. A woman given to a decent man who does not see her has no such clean exit. Eleanor lay awake, doing the arithmetic of the next 40 years, the courteous mornings, the wanting for nothing, the never once being asked, and she understood that she was looking at a comfortable starvation, the kind that kills slowly and leaves a well-kept house and a woman inside it who has forgotten the sound of her own opinion. And down the hall slept Jonah, who had asked her 100 questions and listened to every answer. And the wall between the wrong brother and the right one was 3 days of honest talk and a lifetime of consequence. Eleanor was sensible. She had always been sensible. Being sensible had gotten her signed away to pay a debt, and now being sensible was going to keep her there, and for the first time in her life, she lay awake wondering whether sensible had ever once been on her side, or whether it had only ever been the name she gave to doing what other people had decided for her. Marcus Reed did a thing his pride should have forbidden and his decency demanded. And the two had a harder fight in him than anyone watching would have guessed. He went to his father's old study, where the debt papers were kept, and he brought them out, and he tore up the marriage clause in front of Eleanor and Jonah both. "The debt's forgiven either way," he said. "I'll not have it said the Reeds took a homestead from a dead man's daughter. That part stands, but the marriage was a term of business, and I've looked at the business, and it's bad business to marry a woman who is in love with my brother, while my brother dies a little every supper, watching her pass me the salt." He set down the torn papers. "I wanted a wife who'd run my house and want for nothing. I can find that, or not, in my own time. What I won't do is be the reason two people I have to look at every day spend 40 years being sensible at each other across my table." He was not gentle about it, because gentleness was not in him. But it was the most generous thing Eleanor had ever seen a proud man do, and she told him so, and Marcus said that generosity had nothing to do with it, that he simply could not abide a poorly arranged situation, and that this one had been arranged badly by her father and him both, and he was correcting an error of business. He let them all keep that fiction, that it was only business, because it let him do the kind thing without admitting it was kind, and Eleanor understood that this, too, was a way of being decent, and that she had misjudged him, the way she had been misjudging the whole arrangement since the day she signed her name. Eleanor Shaw married Jonah Reed in the autumn, on the land her father's debt had once threatened, the debt forgiven, and the marriage clause in ashes. Marcus stood up for his brother at the wedding, stiff and proud and present, and gave them the South Quarter as a gift, and never once let anyone thank him too warmly for any of it. There is a line the old cattleman used, that a man is measured by what he does with what he does not have to do, and Marcus Reed had not had to tear up a single clause of a debt that the law and custom both said was his to collect. He tore it up anyway. Eleanor lived the rest of her life beside the brother who asked her questions and listened to the answers. Two threads finally run as one, and she never forgot that the man who set her free was the one she had been promised to, who wanted nothing for it but to be left alone to call his kindness business. The 2 days Marcus sat with his anger were, though no one knew it, the making of him. A lesser proud man would have acted on the anger, would have married Eleanor out of spite and ownership, would have sent Jonah off the ranch to remove the problem rather than examine it. Marcus did none of that. He watched and he weighed, and somewhere in the watching the proud, certain air did a thing prideful men almost never manage, which was to see a situation clearly, even though seeing it clearly cost him the comfortable version where he was simply the wronged party owed his bride. "I keep coming back to the same place," he told Jonah at the corrals. "I try to be angry, and I am. And then I think on 40 years of suppers, you across the table dying quiet, and her passing me the salt and pretending, and me knowing the whole time, and I find I would rather be the brother who let her go than the brother who held her and watched that happen. I didn't expect to feel that. I don't much like feeling it. But there it is. And I'm not a man who argues with a thing once I've seen it plain.